AtGames has had a questionable track record with some of their plug-and-play consoles. Because of that, it's easy to disregard some of their newer consoles, but last year they released the Atari Flashback 12 Gold, which is about $100 on Amazon. It seems like an innocent collection. Could it really be that bad? Let's take an honest look at it. What's going on? It's Podrez coming at you with another video. I'm actually really excited to try this one out. Alright, so pause the video really quick. Check to see really quick if you're subscribed. If you're not, hit that button right there. We just hit 30k, only you can help me get to 40k. And check out our Discord server, discord.podrez.net. Alright, let's turn this on and get it going. Starting with Flashback 3, AtGames took over operations with the Atari Flashback lineup of consoles. The previous two were made by Legacy Engineering Group and were much different products from the ones we have today. Flashback 1 was rushed to the market and as a result suffered greatly. The team resorted to using NES on a chip opposed to emulation, and the games were butchered as a result. Flashback 2 on the other hand used real hardware on a chip, so the games feel more like the real thing. There's an excellent lineup of games too, and I consider this to be the best Flashback console. I made a video on these two products, so definitely check it out. When AtGames took over, they undid what Legacy Engineering Group set as a standard. Every Flashback console after this would use software emulation opposed to real hardware. Not necessarily a bad thing, but unfortunate because Flashback 2 really went above and beyond. But if I'm being honest, most people are really not going to notice that the games are emulation, so if we ignore this one technicality, does AtGames deliver a quality product? I decided to check out their latest console, which was released in 2023, the Flashback 12 Gold. I have a very good first impression because of the hardware itself. The console is small, which I like, and there's switches on the front that still have to be used for the games. It's almost like you're playing the 2600 for real. I thought they would cheap out on the controllers, but surprisingly it feels just like the real thing. I'm honestly impressed. The biggest advantage with this collection though is the inclusion of paddle controllers. Most collections like these only give you one kind of controller, not both. The paddle itself feels just like the real thing, so I honestly have no complaints. The unit itself has a strong lineup of 130 games. They even included some Activision and Magic titles as well. I thought they would throw in some filler games like another collection we looked at, but every game on here is well thought out. They managed to include just about every Activision game I can think of, even Pitfall 2, which is very surprising. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of a Magic representation on here. They got Demon Attack on here, but they're missing Atlantis and Cosmic Arc. The latter one is my favorite, so I'm sad they didn't include it. The menu is decent. They give you a visual of what the box looks like instead of just text, and you can categorize the list of games alphabetically, by Atari games or by paddle games. It's weird that you can't show just Activision games or just Magic games though. The boxes to the games look really pixelated, almost like they're low-quality JPEGs. This collection gives you a lot of games, but doesn't give you much else besides that. You can change the bezel background, and you do get text-based instructions on how to play the game, but that's about it. You're not told what the game variations do at all, not even in the instruction manual. Other collections like Atari 50 will give you a visual on what each game variation does, which is a nice feature, but on this, you have to look it up yourself. On the plus side, you do select the game variations by using the switches on the console, which feels more like the original experience. AtGames definitely could have given us more features, but at least they didn't give us nothing. After playing some games, I have no complaints about the emulation. It feels just like the original console. Even games like Real Sports Boxing, which normally cause issues on emulators, worked just fine on here. This is what I was talking about before. There's hardly any differences between this and the real hardware on a chip that Legacy Engineering Group was using. Flashback 2 is definitely way cooler, but what AtGames did on here is perfectly fine too. I did notice that the game Quad Run was not included in this collection though. This is just speculation, but I wonder if they didn't add it because they couldn't get the voice to work.
Quad Run.
Anyway, with all this talk about games, let's take a look at some. Let's start off with Moonsweeper by Imagic. You start off in space and you must enter one of the planets that pass by. When you do, you're supposed to rescue 6 prisoners that are stranded there. The idea is that you want to be on these planets so that you can rescue the prisoners, and you want to avoid being in space as much as possible. This section has comets that come down at weird angles and are difficult to avoid. The planet section plays a lot like Solaris, where you're able to accelerate and slow down. The graphics also look incredible. Somehow this game pulled off a 3D perspective 3 years before Solaris. Here's Decathlon by Activision. You're in the Olympics and you participate in various events. In the running events, you press left and right to accelerate, which is definitely harder than it looks with a 2600 controller. The game is comparable to Track and Field by Atari. Atari's version has better graphics, and you actually run against an opponent rather than by yourself. But there's not as many events in this version, only 6 compared to the 10 that Decathlon has. Those are both huge numbers though. Decathlon has a few events that I didn't expect. The most surprising one is the 1500 meter run where you have to pace yourself. I definitely don't see long distance events in games like these too often, so it's very cool to see here. There's a few things that I don't like though. Like I mentioned before, the running events are solo, which isn't as fun. There's also less challenge. In Track and Field, if you don't meet the score requirement, you start over from the beginning. But here, it doesn't matter how you perform, you still move on to the next event. You do get a score though, and it might be fun to see if you or your friends can beat it. This is a great game overall, but I prefer Track and Field. We're gonna test out a paddle game. Here's Kaboom by Activision. You play as the water buckets below, and you must catch the bombs from above. The longer you last, the quicker the bombs start falling. If you miss, you lose one of your buckets. The less buckets you have, the harder the game becomes. The idea is that you want to score as many points as possible while you still have all 3 buckets. The paddle honestly feels great. I didn't notice any issues compared to real hardware. In fact, I did extremely well in my playthrough. That's not going to happen on a bad controller. I also tried Super Breakout. You play as the paddle below, and you must use the bouncing ball to clear all the bricks above. Atari's take on this game, which is the original take since they invented it, is different from what other Breakout games would achieve later on. You can only clear 1 brick at a time, and somehow can even hit pieces from a diagonal angle that shouldn't be possible. This title really benefits from having game variations because it gives you more replayability. My favorite is the one where the bricks constantly move downward. The paddle controller works perfectly, and like with Kaboom, I had a really good game. Demons to Diamonds is another paddle game that I tested out. You play as a ship below, and you must shoot down the red demons and turn them into diamonds. If you shoot the demons that are not red, they become a skeleton and they start shooting at you. It's best to avoid the non-red demons. If this game used the regular joystick, this would have been a decent game, but because it uses a paddle controller, I feel like I have more control, and therefore I consider this an excellent game. Here's Cosmic Commuter by Activision. It's a Defender-type game with a few extra innovations. First, you have to land your ship without falling too fast. Then you play a horizontally scrolling segment where you must save the hostages, and then you must take off safely to the next planet. As you progress through the game, the enemies will change patterns, like moving in a zigzag direction, for example. You also have to worry about running out of gas, which depletes very quickly. I have to commend the horizontal scrolling because the console doesn't natively support this feature. Activision managed to take an existing formula and make it their own. Very fun game, and I'm glad they included it. Oink is an Activision title you don't hear about too much. You play as the pig above. The wolf will use his tongue and break your wall, and you must rebuild with the bricks above. For whatever reason, the wolf has an extremely long tongue. If he gets you, he does suck you towards him, but nearby bricks might save you from being eaten. The best strategy is to spread out your bricks so that there's no gaping holes. That way, even if you do get caught by his tongue, you won't lose a life. While this is not Activision's best game, it's a surprisingly fun title and I wanted to keep playing. They made a very weird decision with Space Invaders. At first, I thought it was cool that this game was included on here, but I was quickly disappointed when I started playing. This is not the 2600 version of Space Invaders. This is the original Atari version. It clearly looks much different. I don't know why they gave us this arcade port. On any other collection, this version would be perfectly fine, but I was expecting the 2600 game, not this. It's a small disappointment because most people are buying this for nostalgia. We want the home console versions that we grew up with. How does the Atari Flashback 12 Gold stand out against this competition? The Atari Gamestation is a worthy contender. It has slightly more games, 139 instead of 130, and it supports more consoles like the 7800 and arcade. You can use an SD card with the Gamestation, which means you can play your own ROMs on it, but it doesn't have Activision or Magic games, and the controllers are much worse. The fact that Flashback 12 gives you original controllers and a paddle controller is a huge benefit, but the Gamestation controller feels cheap in the hands and not near as great to use. If you want more consoles than the 2600 or prefer having an SD card slot, the Gamestation is for you. Otherwise, I actually think Flashback 12 is the better option. Atari 50 is another good option. This one beats Flashback 12 in most ways. You have way more options in the menu, like being able to add scan lines and change the resolution. You can also see what each game variation does, which is a huge weakness of Flashback 12. The game list is also increasing as we speak. There was an update in December that added 12 new games, and an October update that added 19 more. Next month, there's going to be a DLC that adds 20 new games. This might seem like the better option, but there are no Activision or Magic games, and you're stuck with the Switch Pro controller. With Flashback 12, you're getting a controller that looks and feels like the original. I'm genuinely surprised by the Atari Flashback 12 Gold. I had so-so expectations going in, but when I opened the box and saw that the game comes with paddle controllers, this was a good first impression. Even though it's software emulation, the games play like the originals, and the controllers look and feel authentic as well. You also get a good lineup of games, and even some Activision and Magic titles on here. There are some missing games that I wish were on here, and AtGames doesn't quite give you enough settings to play around with, but this is definitely one of the best options for playing 2600 games. Hey, I just wanted to thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it this far, hit that like button. If you enjoy this type of content, hit the subscribe button for more content. Both of these things really help the channel grow. If you have anything to share, feel free to leave a comment. I read every single comment on this channel, and I'm pretty good at replying back. Anyway, have a good one.